Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horne, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
You're players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And good evening, everyone. Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of Louisiana Radio Network, along with the Executive Editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horne, and the Editor, Glenn Guilbeau. Glad he could join us on this Tuesday night. Jackson Blackman, our producer. A lot to get into over the next couple of hours, plus plenty of baseball talk here. Charles Hanagriff from ESPN 104.5 will be joining us a little bit later on in the hour. We'll also talk some softball. Jim Kleinpeter, who works for Tiger Rag and for The Advocate, covers softball for The Advocate. He will join us, talk about the Tigers' early dismissal from the NCAA Tournament. And there's going to be a new LSU president. William Tate is leaving. So we'll get into that conversation as well. And a lot of other stuff we'll dive into here over the next couple of hours. But, guys, how we doing? The regular season is done, and this single elimination SEC baseball tournament is underway.
Yes, it's an exciting time for college baseball, but not so much for LSU because they really don't need to win, and it's going to be a different SEC tournament though, single elimination. So it's going to be kind of interesting. But hopefully LSU will win a game and they can use some of their pitchers, that's all Skip ever wanted out of the SEC tournament, and I think Jay's kind of seeing it the same way. But it's it's just an appetizer for what's fixing to happen with the regional and super regional weekends. And I need to mention too, Piper Hutchinson's going to be joining us at 7 p.m. She's from the Louisiana Illuminator and covers LSU as a university, and we'll be talking about Tate leaving as president.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. So do you feel then there's been a lot of conversation here, Glenn, about what is Jay Johnson going to do as far as how he's going to set up his pitching for this game on Friday night? Jay Johnson met with the media today. I would imagine he did not say Cade Anderson was starting out right. What do you think? I feel he's going to play this like a regular weekend. It's going to be Anderson on Friday, and if they win, we'll see Anthony Ianson on Saturday, and then we'll TBA for if they get to the SEC Tournament Championship.
That's what he's going to do, and he didn't come out and say that, but he did explain that he wanted to keep Cade and Ianson on the Friday, Saturday. That's why they skipped Cade on Thursday last week, and so this Friday will be his third straight Friday. So he was doing that with this in mind, but he's going to take Anderson out of the game earlier than usual, which makes a lot of sense. He said that last week, actually. And he also brought up an example where he had Paul Skeens pitching in the SEC tournament in 23, and it was about the third or fourth inning, and the bases were loaded, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to get him out of there. He's thrown 29 pitches this inning. Right. So it's going to be similar to that, but, they could be home Friday night if they don't win that game, but if they win the second game, they'll play pitch Ianson, and then after that, it'll be interesting to see who he uses out of the bullpen.
Yeah, my feeling is he would love to get Anderson and Ianson another start. It's not like these guys are showing any signs of wear and tear. It's not like they're slowing down. And I know Ianson's start on Saturday was not his best, but he still grinded through 7 innings. And I could see if these two guys seem to be really dragging at this point, okay, this would be good to give them a week off before regionals. But to me, I think it's more important for them to actually pitch this week so that they stay on a regular routine and that they're sharp for the regionals.
Sure. And Jay was one of the few coaches to vote for to keep the SEC tournament at double elimination because he likes to go there and play games and get games in and get pitchers in. And it's a delicate balance because if you don't want to give a guy a week off. And like Manera used to do that smartly with NOLA, but you don't want to get them rusty, and then they got like 2 weeks off going into the regional.
Yeah.
But you can get around that by having them pitch a simulated game or in the bullpen. But you want to get them out there and pitch a little bit is what I think they'll do in both instances if Cade and Ianson pitch.
LSU gets the series victory over South Carolina this past weekend. There was a lot of frustration on Thursday when they lost that game. It happens, I think, sometimes. I mean, it's baseball. These things happen, but I still felt good about what was going to happen on Friday and Saturday because they had Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson going, and those guys were going to shut down South Carolina and hold them to just minimal runs, and LSU offensively should be able to score 6, 7, 8 runs, and that's exactly what happened. They were able to do that.
Yeah, and if they would have lost one of those second or third games, they would be in a situation now where they probably would need to win an SEC tournament game to secure the 8 seed, or at least to feel better about it. I mean, there's some of the guys who do the top 8 seed prognostication. They said they were in after they beat Arkansas twice, So really the only way they could have not had the 8 seed is if they got swept by South Carolina. But it's a little too close for comfort, So it's a good thing they won both.
I'm glad you brought that up because I spent the last 2 hours looking into all of that math. And they dropped from 7 to 8 in the RPI.
After they lost to South Carolina?
After they lost the first game to South Carolina.
To 9.
No, they dropped to 8. That's where it is. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones, but I'm talking about the ones I looked at. So they dropped from 7th to 8th. But when you paired that drop with the rest of the mathematical formula, they dropped from the number 2 seed projected to the number 7 seed projected. And right now, if they don't win one game in the SEC tournament, depending on what happens elsewhere, it's possible they could lose that top 8 seed. According to
the
the math.
According to the math of the RPIs you're looking at?
No,
or just
according to the way the RPI figures into the projection seeding, according to the way it works. So Jay, I know, said he feels good about it, that they've earned the top 8 seed and all that. Well, it doesn't matter what you think or what he thinks or what I think or what anybody else thinks. It's according to this, it's the math.
Well, we'll see. If they lose the first game and get the 8 seed, then that math is off.
But it's interesting because if they play Auburn versus Mississippi State, they benefit whether they win or lose.
Well, let me ask you
On
this:
paper.
if somehow it comes down to who's going to get that 8th spot, and it's between LSU and Auburn, and LSU loses to Auburn, that's 4 wins.
Right, but no, that's a good point. But
because I would think Auburn is on the bubble to be a top 8 national seed.
Well,
I know their RPI is higher.
According to the math right now for the projection seeds, if they stick to that and they don't bring the eye test into it. Look,
that's just it. They don't always stick to it.
LSU's ranked number 1 unanimously in the polls right now.
And that has a little bit to do with it.
Well, not according to what they're saying right now.
So why do you even need a tournament selection committee? Why don't you just look at the RPI and go 1 through 64, and here you go.
I'm not taking one side or the other. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
But I think there is a bit of human element to it.
And if Florida State beats North Carolina in the ACC tournament, you got a problem too, potentially.
Well, here's the thing. There's one way they do the RPIs and the RPI rankings during the season, and there's another way they do the final top 8 seeds. Because in the final top 8 seeds, they use the RPI heavily, but they also weigh in some other things, just human nature, some of the rankings, and they still look at where they're putting the regional sites and where the potential super regional sites might be.
So let's just
it's not completely by the book.
But let's just make it easy. Jay said they are important. It's important. He wants to win the championship. It's a tournament. They want the trophy and all that. Just go ahead and win 2 games, because if they beat Auburn and let's say they play Arkansas and they beat Arkansas again, they may be the number 1 seed, regardless of whether they win the tournament or not, the way the math works. So, just win.
It's difficult to win, but they're gonna also get credit for playing in the toughest tournament.
That's what
that's what you were saying about Auburn, right?
Right.
But they can't just go out and say, okay, we're going to win 2 games.
But if South Carolina beats Florida and somehow pulls some Maneri magic and ends up playing LSU again, that could hurt LSU in the RPI.
Yeah.
Just like it did last week.
But if LSU plays South Carolina in the SEC tournament, that means they would have won their first game.
That doesn't matter. They're still going to be in the 70s in their RPI.
I don't know, man. I think you're looking at it a little.
I did the math.
Well, sometimes it's not math.
I'm not saying it's going to be one way or the other. I'm saying currently, the reason that LSU dropped from number 2 in the projected seeds last week all the way to number 7 is partially because they were playing South Carolina, and South Carolina's RPI was so low.
Which projected seeds are you talking about?
D1 baseball and the other baseball
those
America.
Are just a bunch of guys.
No, that's not what they do. They don't sit around and project it themselves. They talk to the people on the committee.
And those are a bunch of guys. And Jay Johnson's a guy.
But they follow.
It's still a human element.
You can deny it all you want to, but there is a formula whether they choose to stick with it. What I'm telling you.
And that's what I'm telling you.
No.
They don't stick with it when they start naming the seeds.
But that's not what we're saying, you doofus.
Well, what are you saying?
We're saying if they stick with what they did last week and LSU has to play.
They're not going to.
Okay, but that's not the point.
Well,
the point is that's how LSU dropped from number 2 to number 7. And if they were to stick to this same thing again, if LSU had to play South Carolina in the tournament, it would hurt them. Whereas if they play Auburn, whether they win or lose, it helps them.
I've never seen anybody more than you talk about who you're playing, whether than you win or not.
That's maybe because you need to look into the.
No, I think you're looking at it too much. It's making circles in your brain.
It's math, you doofus.
Well, it's not all math.
It is right now.
No. LSU, if they lose the opening game of the tournament, they're still going to be in the Final 8.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying according to the math, they would be in trouble. So if they don't change the way they're figuring it right now, okay, then they do have some they need to do something in the tournament, especially if they play South Carolina, for instance.
Well, if they play South Carolina, it would mean they've done something in the tournament.
You don't understand.
All right, let's move on. I think it's time to take a commercial break, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's time to take a huge break. Can we do a triple break?
We're going to do a 4-minute break. How about that? We'll do a 4-minute break. We'll stop looking at all the math and talk about the team. Again, we got Charles Hanagriff coming up. We'll get into some softball talk as well. William Tate discussion as well. So, heck, a lot to get to here. May dive into, we'll try to find a football topic or two to bounce around as well. So a lot to get to here on Tiger Rag Radio. We're glad that you're a part of it. Again, LSU will play Friday night. That'll be their first game in the SEC tournament. They'll play either Auburn, Mississippi State, or Texas A&M. So I was hoping they could maybe match up against Vanderbilt or Florida, a team they haven't faced yet this year. But it would be nice to see them play Auburn again and see what that game looks like on a neutral field. So we'll take a break. More of Tiger Rag Radio right after this.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
How you doing? This is Snoop Dogg.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are tuned in.
Talk LSU sports, interviews, opinions, and your calls around the Tiger Nation.
Baton Rouge was a life for me. Home with LSU Tigers.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio.
We love to score and get highlights and championships and play to win.
Tiger Rag Radio.
All right, we're back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Charles Hanagriff from ESPN 104.5 will join us coming up in the next segment. Let's talk about this LSU baseball team as a whole here, or just where it stands right now and how guys are performing. I thought it was great to see Jared Jones get the power back going a little bit, 3 home runs. It'd be nice for him to be swinging a hot bat. Derek Curiel had 3 hits in the final game. I think we have seen that left-handers are doing a nice job with Curiel. I think he's struggling a little bit with left-handed pitchers. I think that's part of the reason why LSU has struggled against lefties this season, is he has not been as effective against left-handed pitchers than right-handed. Stephen Milam had a couple hits Saturday. I really think, man, if Milam can find whatever groove he got into last postseason, it really will complete this offense, considering you had, especially on Saturday, you had that threesome at the top in Curiel, Dickinson, and Jones. Those guys were performing very well. And then you got Jake Brown, who had 3 hits. But if you can get Milam to the spot where he was last year, I just think that takes this offense to a whole nother level. Maybe not a whole nother level, at least a level up, right? I guess that's the same thing. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think they've been balanced all year. And even with the slump, there was a month slump there, team-wide. Curiel got 3 hits in the Friday game, I think it was.
No, he was hitless going into the Saturday.
And he got 3 hits.
He got 3 hits.
And he was not only was he hitless in the series, he was like about 3 for 34 over his previous. So that was his biggest
lefties
slump.
he has struggled here. And again, LSU has hit a slew of left-handed pitchers once again.
Yeah, that's the thing. And most batters struggle.
Yes.
Most right-handed hitters struggle against left-handers.
Lefties.
That's why you can be an average left-handed pitcher and pitch in Major League Baseball longer than an average right-handed pitcher. But I think they've never had any like real killer slumps. And even when some guys were slumping, other guys were hitting. Yeah. And I think they have come along a little bit of late. Of course, South Carolina didn't have the greatest pitching. But I think they have enough hitting throughout their lineup that a couple of guys can be slumping and they can still score enough to win.
I think the biggest thing for LSU, I agree they've been pretty much balanced. They've had slumps. We all know that. But I think they move into a bigger ballpark in Hoover. And then after the Super Regionals, when they go to Omaha, and I think that's going to benefit this LSU team, the way they hit more doubles. They're like 29-4 when they hit more than 2 home runs. And they're like 9-4 when they hit less than 2 home runs.
And I agree that this is a more of a double team, but when you're going up against really good pitching, which they will and they'll probably face it Friday and Saturday as well. There are times where you just need a bloop hit and then someone to hit the ball out of the ballpark because the pitcher is that good.
No, I agree, and that's why Milam is important. I agree with that. I also think Hernandez falls into that category as well.
Yes, yeah. I that's where I'm saying that the 6-7 spot in this lineup has been, if there's been an area where it's underperformed, if you would, it would be there at times. Hernandez has had his slump. Milam has been hitting around 200 for the entire SEC play. He's hit into a bunch of double plays, hit into a double play in the South Carolina series.
Everybody did.
At one point, you're right. It seemed like it. I just think he could be just such a huge X factor for this team if he can get the bat going.
I agree. And I think that Curiel's not going to, even though he has struggled against left-handed pitching, I think he's going to break out of that slump in the postseason.
I am thinking that this kid is pretty intense as far as a baseball player, and he's all into baseball. And I agree with who should have won SEC Freshman of the Year. Volantis, the pitcher from Texas, put up unreal numbers this year. 4-0, 1.6 ERA, 12 saves, a whole bunch of strikeouts. But I wonder if Carriel, that motivates him.
I think that's
big time.
I think
big
that's
time
big time
motivates
motivation. But I think the biggest motivation is the 3 for 34.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that keeps LSU out of slumps, really hurting the team, is they have an uncanny pitch hitting team batting average. They're 30 for 102 as team pitch hitting for a 294 average. Their opponents are 5 for 52 for an 0.96 average. Jake Brown, who you've been saying all year should play regularly, he's 6 for 11 as a pinch hitter, 545.
But that's all against right-handers, right?
This isn't split between righty and lefty. Ethan Fry is hitting 400 as a pinch hitter. I'm just making the point that, when you put in a pinch hitter, it might be because somebody's slumping. It might be situation. Right. It might be righty or lefty. It could be a number of things, but it's uncanny. I mean, they're almost hitting 300 pinch hitting.
I'm glad you brought up Ethan Fry. He's been red hot.
And it doesn't matter if it's a lefty or righty against him.
He has been red hot. He's been very good here the last 3 weeks or so. We'll see if it continues. All right, we'll take a break. We'll get Charles Hanagriff's thoughts on it. He's been following LSU baseball for a long time. He's a walking encyclopedia when it comes to LSU baseball. And, of course, he hosts a midday show on ESPN 104.5 and 104.9 here in Baton Rouge with Jimmy Ott. So we'll talk to Charlie when we come back here on Tiger Rag Radio.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row, and honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio inside the Chevy Dealer Studio, Super Chevy Dealer Studio here in Baton Rouge. Jeff Palermo along with Glenn Guilbeau and Todd Horne, and joining us now on the Max Home Hotline, it is Charles Hanagriff joining us from ESPN 104.5 and 104.9. You can hear him and Jimmy Ott every day from 11 to 1 o'clock. Charlie, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, guys. Good to be with you.
I'm doing well. Your favorite time of the year, is this it right here?
I love this time of year. It's all meaningful baseball. It's got a real tension to it. So, yeah, and this week's sort of like the appetizer with the conference tournaments. Yeah, I love this time of year.
Well, Charlie, obviously a lot of discussion on whether this is a top 8 national team. Have they already sewn that up? In your mind, you believe it is, isn't it? Isn't that how you're looking at it?
Yeah, I don't think that, regardless of how the conference tournaments go, we're really talking about 2 conference tournaments here, the ACC and the SEC. I don't see a mathematical way that they're not a top 8, that there are 8 resumes that are going to be better than theirs at the end of the weekend. I think the teams that are already in front of them in the SEC, as far as an RPI standpoint, are probably all locks. I think the ones that aren't there can't catch LSU for it. So then it comes down to the ACC. I think North Carolina's in. I don't think Florida State will give an outside chance to catch LSU for a top 8 seed if they won the ACC tournament. But that's it. I don't think Coastal Carolina gets a top 8. I think they get a host site, winning the Sun Belt by 4 games, and then that just leaves you with the Big Ten, which is Oregon and UCLA. I don't think either one of them can top. I am interested to see what the committee does with Oregon State. They're an independent. They did manage a top 40 strength of schedule, but they've got 10 Q1 wins and no tournament to play in this week, so they can't do anything with their resume now. Their RPI is in front of LSU, but I don't think they've got a better overall resume than LSU. I just think they played a lot of games on the road. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't see a scenario where they get 8 teams with a better resume than the Tigers.
Charles, did it bother you at all that LSU dropped from a projected number 2 seed, and because they dropped from number 7 to number 8 in the RPI, and that was enough to shift them to a number 7 projected seed this week?
Well, it didn't bother me because it's one group's opinion, and I've known Kendall Rogers for years. I've got a ton of respect for what they do, but they don't always have the order right. I mean, nobody really does. It's a tough thing because we don't know what stat is going to be most important in that committee room. Is it Q1 wins? Is it conference record? Is it strength of schedule? Is it road wins? There's a number of different things that they could choose to emphasize if they want to. And that's why I said, I can see where Auburn, just for instance, if LSU beats Auburn, they will assure themselves of a better conference record in terms of wins. Even if Auburn, wins these first 2, LSU beats them. But Auburn's ahead of them in the RPI, and they've got more Q1 wins, and they won the series. So which one of those things matters the most? So I don't know if they've got the order, and that's not as important. The only difference is between 8 and 9.
So it would be worst case scenario, theoretically for LSU, would be to have to play South Carolina on Friday and Florida State win the ACC tournament.
Saturday.
They can't play South Carolina. That's not in their pod. The lowest ranked team in their pod is A&M, and South Carolina's getting beat by about 6 or 7 runs.
But if South Carolina came back and beat Florida, they could work their way into playing LSU if LSU played in the bracket.
Until Saturday.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
but
you were saying
Saturday.
Friday.
Yeah. That wouldn't help anything. And again, Oregon State is the wild card to me. I don't know what they do with a team without a conference record. So, I guess that would be the worst case scenario. And even if that happens, they still might get in.
Right.
Charles, do you think if LSU had lost 2 out of 3 at South Carolina instead of just 1, would they be in a situation now where they had to win a game in Hoover?
The only thing that's stopping me from saying yes is the guys at D1 don't think a whole lot of Alabama. I was surprised that even with a 9 RPI, they didn't even have them as a host site. And that's the next, and I say Alabama because that's the team that's right behind LSU in the RPIs. So if you had flipped a game, Alabama would probably be in front of LSU in the RPIs, even though they would have, in that scenario, 2 fewer wins than LSU. And of course, they won today. Well, Glenn, that's a good question. It'd be a lot closer. And the other team I would give an outside shot, I don't think they get quite to the top 8, but Florida is as hot as anybody. If they won the whole SEC tournament, I think they played themselves into the top 16, probably just on the other side of the top 8.
Well, Charles, compared to other LSU teams that have advanced to Omaha, how do you see this team compared to like, say, the 23 team or some other teams? How do you compare?
They look a little bit like the 15 team a little bit to me, where you had those 2 big arms up at the top in Lang and Poche, and that team didn't hit as many home runs maybe, and this team is not a team that's based on power. They've got a couple of guys, but they don't have 4 or 5 guys that are going to hit 17 to 20 homers. And I thought that was a really good team. I thought that 15 team, had a chance if things would have gone a little bit differently to make a deeper run than even they did. And that team got to the World Series. They're not like the 09 team. They don't have as much offensive firepower. They do have, I think that pitching staff in 09 is very similar to this when you had Anthony Renato and Louis Coleman up at the top, and Matty Ott had a record season out of the bullpen. There's some similarities there with Anderson and Ianson and Zach Cowan coming out of the bullpen. But that team had more offense from top to bottom than this one does. So the 15 team is right off the top of my head.
Charlie, when we had you on a few weeks ago, and I don't remember how the question was phrased to you, but your answer was the biggest strength for this team was the two studs that were coming out of the bullpen at the time, and Zach Cowan and Casey Evans, and how those two guys were just lockdown relievers. And now we all know Casey Evans' role has changed a little bit. Cowan's had a couple of shaky performances. Would you say now the strength of this team is the fact that they got two ace starters, and they will be very tough to beat because they do have guys, they do have Cade Anderson and Anthony Hutchinson, and trying to get past those guys in a regional and even more importantly in a super regional will be very difficult.
Yeah, I would, Jeff. And I remember the conversation. I don't remember what week of the season it was, but since then, the top two starters have pitched better than Cowan and Evans. Although I will say this, I think of Case and Evans going in the postseason as a reliever and not a starter.
Mm-hmm.
At least if things are going well for LSU. I don't think they'll hesitate to use him in a save situation early in a regional, certainly in game one of a super regional if they needed to do that. I don't think of them as saving him for game three of anything. Now that begs the question, who would pitch a game three of, say, a super regional or even a regional where they had to beat you twice? And right now, I don't know. I think there's some guys making a bid for that. I think Chase Shores is pitching a lot better now than he was when he was in the starting rotation. Maybe it's best to keep him where he is. What about Jaden Newt? Newt has pitched a lot better in the last half of the season. It seems like he's finally getting some innings under his belt. We forget this guy missed 2 years of baseball. So, those two guys would give you a shot maybe. I think that they had hoped that Connor Ware would be in that discussion, but after last Thursday, I don't think so. No. I think it's one of those other guys. So I think of Evans, this very long-winded answer. I feel like Evans is a reliever right now until further notice, I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, who do you think they would start in a third game of a regional or a super regional? And, I mean, there is a possibility where they could be looking at a third starter and either Cowan or Kaysen may not have pitched that much yet, or pitched at all, depending on how that, say, a split in the super regional went. So it could come down to Cowan or Evans. You think that most likely Cowan, I would think.
If you had a choice between Cowan and Evans, you would take Cowan to start because he's got so much more experience at it from his days at Wofford. But I can't imagine a scenario where they get to a game three and those two guys haven't pitched already. I mean, I guess if they got blown out in one of the games was a blowout, they could have gone down the line a little bit. But the nightmare scenario for me, okay, this is absolutely worst case scenario for LSU in a super regional, is that Anderson and Cowan pitch on the game one, Hutchinson and Evans pitching game two, and they split those games.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have no good answer. I don't know. That would be a tough one for Jay Johnson.
I think Jaden Newt is the guy. I think he's really emerged, and I agree with you, Charlie. I don't think you move Chase Shores out of the role that he's – I don't think he looks really comfortable now as a guy out of the bullpen for whatever reason. And I think for him, maybe the same thing with Jaden Newt. It's just it took a while. You're talking about a guy who missed all of last year and barely pitched in 23. So – Charlie, thanks a lot for your time, man. We appreciate it. We'll have to catch up with you again, maybe when LSU's in Omaha.
Enjoyed it, gentlemen. Have a good night.
All right, Charlie Hanagriff from ESPN 104.5 and 104.9. Let's take a break. More coming up here from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio in Baton Rouge here on Tiger Rag Radio.
And we're back with Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horne and Glenn Guilbeau. Good conversation there with Charlie Hanagriff. Coming up at 7 o'clock, we'll talk with Piper Hutchinson from the Louisiana Illuminator and Tiger Rag about a new president. LSU, or I should say really, Governor Jeff Landry and the LSU Board of Supervisors will be looking for a new leader now that William Tate is leaving for Rutgers University. Also an interesting, I was going to ask Piper when she is here. She's joining us in studio, is that?
Yeah, she's going to be here in person.
Oh, okay. There's an interesting bill that's making its way through the legislature that would raise the tax on sports betting, and the money would then go to athletic departments. We'll get some more from her about that. It just passed the Louisiana House today.
So it's got to go to the Senate.
Still got to go to the Senate, but there seems to be a lot of, hey, anything for winning sports teams in the state, Louisiana lawmakers usually go for.
Didn't they have to lower the tax rate, in order to get it through the House?
Yes. From what it was proposed.
Right.
Like, I think it was 32. I think they knocked it down to 24 or whatever it was, but yeah, so we'll get Piper's thoughts on that and whether that legislation stands. Yeah, very interesting with LSU's pitching staff right now. I do think Jaden Newt is a guy that, if they got into that super regional series, it's just so tough to tell tough to forecast because you don't know how games 1 and 2 will turn out. And I know we'll have this discussion next week. I'm interested on how he's going to handle the regional. I think if we go back by 23, Kate Anderson's going to start on Friday against
UNO.
Maybe, which would I didn't like the move at all in 23, and I wouldn't like the move in 25 if they did it that way.
But the interesting thing in 23, though, is that
it did kind of work in 23.
It worked in 23.
Well,
and
again, that team,
Tulane was the hottest team playing the best ball.
Stop it.
So you want to pitch just like a second line starter?
I would throw Jaden Newt.
It does make sense. Yeah.
I would just throw Jaden Newt.
Yeah. Jay.
And they like Chase Shores.
Newt
start.
They like the progress he's made,
But I don't think he's going to go back to a starting.
I don't think so. I think you keep him right where he's at. He's doing exactly what you need out of him, and he's been good. So
they should have started Jaden Newt against South Carolina in game 1, in my opinion. And that's what I thought ahead of time.
What happened to Connor Ware?
If anybody can answer that.
It goes from the best pitcher in the fall to a guy that can't throw strikes anymore.
Right.
Who has been the best third starter this season?
Well, I think Kason Evans did a nice job when he was out there.
So he's the best one. It's not Shores. It's not Connor Ware. I think has Zach Cowan started?
No,
he hasn't. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what might happen. You might see Zach Cowan.
Don't you think they should have started Jaden Newt against South Carolina?
I would think so.
Well, in hindsight, it looks like they should have. Yeah, because he pitched better than Connor did for sure.
What did he go? 6 innings? 5.
Jaden Newt. Well, he went. He retired the 4. It was on Friday night, right?
Right.
He retired.
No, it was
Thursday. It was Thursday. Excuse me. It was. He retired 12 in a row.
Right.
And then he got into a little. There was basically what was it? A error or single? Or it was a hot smash by. That's what it was. It was a hot hit by Braswell, and then the next guy tripled.
Right. And Newt has started midweek games, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, he might be a good bet for that.
Okay, we'll take our final break of hour number 1. More coming up from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horne, inside the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. Todd, you want to bring in Piper now since she's here early?
Piper's early and punctual as usual, so we certainly should bring her in, especially since we were primarily going to talk about the change in the presidency and what Tate's influence was on athletics.
Right,
maybe we can take care of the gambling question ahead of time.
Oh, you want to do that one now? You want to knock that? Okay, all right. So we wanted to ask you, Piper Hutchinson's here with us right now, a fantastic reporter for the Louisiana Illuminator, and Louisiana Illuminator, of course, has a partnership with Tiger Rag, so therefore you see a lot of her stuff with TigerRag.com. And Piper, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Busy day at the Capitol today, huh?
It's always a busy day at the Capitol.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Neil Reiser's bill. It really hasn't received a lot of publicity, and I'm not exactly sure why, because I think it's an important bill, one, for those that like sports betting, because they're going to be taxed more, and nobody likes more taxes, and then two, we all know that athletic departments are looking for money, and this is going to provide money to athletic departments. Kind of explain what the bill does.
Yeah, so that bill just cleared the House just a couple hours ago. So what it does is it increases the tax rate on online sports gambling to 21.5%, and it rearranges the statutory dedications for that revenue, meaning that they're going to dedicate about 25% of the sports gambling revenue for the state to Division I athletic programs, which is a pretty significant chunk of change.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about almost $2 million for each D1 program in Louisiana. I mean, LSU, $2 million.
Drop in the bucket, but for ULM, who's looking for nickels underneath the couch cushion, that's huge.
That's
but
a huge
they will
payday
definitely
for them.
split it evenly amongst all the universities.
That is in the bill right now.
Okay. Now, we were talking about it a bit earlier. They in order to make it through the House, they had to reduce the taxation percentage. Is that correct?
Yeah. So they wanted to double it and make it the same rate as the video poker wagers, but the gambling industry really came down hard with their lobbying efforts. People who do sports betting probably saw ads pop up on their phones a lot. They really came out hard against it, and they found this compromise of increasing it to 21.5% instead.
Is it going to impact if it passes? Will it pass the Senate? Do you think it'll pass the Senate?
I think it'll pass the Senate. It has the backing of the governor.
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you this. Is it going to impact your gambling habits?
My gambling habits, I am not a betting woman, Todd.
But those who like putting bets on, it's going to cost them more, right?
It is going to cost them more, and that's why the industry really came out against it. But, the argument is that these sports gambling operations, they don't have a physical footprint in Louisiana. They don't have jobs here like those casinos do. So their economic impact is really not the same.
Yeah, very interesting. Like I said, I'm just been a little surprised it hasn't received a lot of attention. So,
were you surprised that the NIL bill?
Yeah, good question.
Taxation bill did not pass?
I'm not surprised. No, I mean, the state right now is in not the best fiscal circumstances. They were looking for ways to pay for a teacher pay raise. That now is not the time to give a tax break to $1 million college athletes.
Oh, okay. All right. So more with Piper Hutchinson. We'll talk about William Tate, what it means as far as his departure for LSU athletics, and about whether Piper's heard of any potential candidates that could be looming out there. So we'll get into that. Hour number 2 of Tiger Rag Radio coming up right after this.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What a
talk.
privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horne, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
We want players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horne, the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine. Jackson Blackman, our producer for hour number 2, and still here with us inside the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. It's Piper Hutchinson from the Louisiana Illuminator and Tiger Rag. Piper, thanks a lot for hanging out with us tonight. And you've been all over the story regarding, well, I think out of all the reporters, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but out of all the reporters and we're a dwindling number, to be honest with you. They cover the Capitol and so forth. I don't think anybody covers LSU administration stuff better than Piper. So she's literally the expert on this topic here when it comes to William Tate. And for some people, maybe they that are not really following this, when they heard that William Tate was leaving LSU for Rutgers, maybe it caught them off guard. But this is really not a surprise to anybody that's been reading the tea leaves. And it's also, you see it a lot too, especially in this state, when you have a new governor and the president or chancellor, however it may be. Back in the day, it was assistant president and a chancellor. If it wasn't their guy, kind of like in athletics, if the football coach wasn't hired by the current athletic director, that football coach is always not in a comfortable position. And the same goes for LSU, especially someone like Governor Jeff Landry, who wants to put his fingerprints on everything. And so it's not a surprise that William Tate has found another job.
No, not at all. I mean, we've been hearing rumors about this for weeks. I didn't know until Sunday night that it was going to be Rutgers, but I knew his departure was imminent.
Piper, how much pressure would you say was on Tate, and for how long since Landry became governor?
It was a lot of pressure. I mean, he was walking a really fine line. The governor wanted one thing, the faculty and the staff want another. And when Landry started putting his own people on the board last summer, I mean, things really started to change at LSU. We saw them really try to exert their influence. I mean, one board member said in an open meeting that she wanted a chancellor fired. That chancellor no longer works for LSU Health Shreveport. So you can see the political influence that these people have. And this year, when we started seeing upper administrators start dropping like flies, I mean, that's when you knew that the pressure was really cranking up.
When Brian Kelly was hired at LSU almost 4 years ago now, actually it was 4 years ago now, one of the first things he said was that he came to LSU because of the alignment between himself and Scott Woodward and all the way up to Tate. How important was William Tate to LSU athletics, and how important will the new president, chancellor, be to LSU athletics?
One thing about Tate is that he really let Scott Woodward run athletics as he saw fit. I mean, some presidents are going to want to be more hands-on in athletics, but, I think Tate kind of wanted to be a little bit more hands-off. Some people forget, but Scott Woodward reports to the president. He doesn't report to the board. He doesn't report to the governor. He doesn't report to himself. He has a boss. And some presidents want more things from their athletic directors. I mean, if you think about it just in fiscal circumstances, I mean, a few years ago, Woodward decided he wasn't going to send money back to the university anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at an athletic department like Mississippi State, they're also, struggling a little bit financially, not probably more than LSU is. They're still giving money back to the university. The fact that Woodward was allowed to stop doing that and was not subject to the more recent belt tightening measures kind of indicated that he was given a little bit more free rein under Tate. That could change under a new president.
I will say this. It seemed like, and granted, obviously William Tate liked football, but he had a vested interest in women athletics at LSU. He loves LSU women basketball. He loves gymnastics. I don't know. Softball, I haven't, maybe we'll see. But those two sports in particular, he really, he was fully invested in those two sports.
You got a problem with softball this week.
Why did I say that? I mean, I think everybody's questioning what's going on with the softball program. But anyways, he did seem, it's funny because you look at his Twitter timeline, it's nothing about, hey, this chemistry class or whatever. Nothing about any research. It's all LSU athletics.
Well, and his wife was chaplain for Kim Mulkey in the women's basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, in the practice facility, it's Tate's face up there on the wall alongside Kim Mulkey. I mean, he's a huge, women's sports fan.
Yeah.
I mean, that is also something that might change under a next presidency. Somebody might say, why are we paying Kim Mulkey so much?
Or why are they losing $9 million a year as a program? What are we getting in return for that?
Right.
Very, very, very interesting. And then I one of the strangest story I call it a strange story. Last year was bringing in Roscoe. Whatever his name was, the Tiger.
Or
it wasn't Roscoe. Roscoe's Omar. Oh, yeah. Roscoe's actually the Tiger that's there now. That's now Mike, whatever, the 7. But Omar, thank you. To me, that was just such a strange story because this was something that LSU was not for.
Yeah, well, Tate didn't have anything to do with that.
Right, but he didn't. He certainly
didn't have anything to do with it.
But he didn't endorse it.
No, he didn't have anything to do with it. That's
but
the point.
I don't think he liked it. I don't think anybody at LSU liked it.
That's my point. You're not. He didn't
I understand what you're saying, but
I think Tate maintained plausible deniability about the Tiger.
Right.
But I guess that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that Tate and Landry certainly not on the same page. That and Landry just said, "Well, we're just gonna do this. I don't care."
Okay, so you, Piper, was this a situation where they basically told him to go find another job because your time's limited?
I can't say that definitively, but I think a lot of people suspect that to be the case.
Yeah, and he probably recognized it too. It goes back to my analogy of a football coach who's there and they hire a new AD and he realizes, my job is not completely safe if I go 7-5.
Okay, so here's my question. If they were out of alignment, going back to Brian Kelly, from Landry to Tate, but Tate to Woodward and Woodward to Kelly was good in the alignment. Now there's going to be a front-end alignment, if you will, with a new chancellor, new president. Who's that going to be?
Oh, that's a great question. The names that I'm hearing circulating right now are Congresswoman Julia Letlow.
She's for everything, right? I mean, she's like any job that's open, they're throwing Julia Letlow's name out there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she's being recruited to run for Senate. She's being recruited to be the LSU president. It must be great to be Julia Letlow. She's just wanted for everything. And I mean, she's a lawmaker on the House Appropriations Committee, so she has a pretty good gig, but, she's got a big future ahead of her. But the question I have with Julia Letlow is, if she wasn't considered acceptable to be the president of ULM,
right?
Why is she considered acceptable to be the president of LSU?
Well, maybe she knew this job was opening up. But at least for her, she has a background in higher education.
To a degree, but I mean, the president of a research institution like LSU, the faculty are going to expect them to have a background as an academic, which is something that Tate has. It is also something that Matt Lee, the interim president, has. He may be interested in the job. Yeah. Now,
what about going back to the old system of having a system president and a chancellor?
You're talking about independent because they've already split it now, right?
No, they have not split. They're talking about splitting it.
Now, the whole reason why they brought it in is, hey, we can save money here without having to pay two different people over $500,000. Well, now the going rate would be like
$750,000.
Yeah, back then it was more like $300,000, $400,000 or whatever it was. Now we just put it all. But now I think they've recognized, maybe that doesn't necessarily work.
Okay, so the question is, are they going to
go back to the old system?
Are they going to go back to the old system?
Where you have a president that oversees all the universities that are connected with LSU, which I think is 8, right? 8 campuses, something like that.
Something like that.
LSU A, LSU Eunice, right. LSU Health New Orleans, blah, blah, blah. And then, or just have someone and then have a chancellor who is just over the Baton Rouge campus itself. Mm-hmm.
I know that the board is discussing that. 2 board members confirmed that to me. Whether they go through with it is a different question. It's like a perpetual discussion that's been going on for years. But, Southern, around the same time that LSU merged their president and their chancellor roles, they did the exact same thing, and they unmerged them last year. So it might be what's, trendy right now.
Well, who else?
It's just goofy. It's just stupid.
Who else is in line, potentially? We only got one name out of that.
I think people want Jim Henderson to apply for the job again. I asked Dr. Henderson about it. He says he's not interested. Yeah. We'll see if that changes.
I think he's fine where he's at Tech. I think he got burned trying to go for the LSU. I think his feelings got hurt. I mean, it's maybe not his feelings, but
what did he say when you talked to him?
He said he was happy where he was. I think if Dr. Henderson throws his hat in the ring, he risks there being more political questions as we're talking about transferring UNO back into the LSU system about this budget problem happened while you were over the UL system. Why should we trust you with UNO again? So I think he may want to stay out of the fray for those reasons.
And I think I thought Jim brought up a good point. I guess you were probably sitting in that same seat. Jim Inkster, our boss, during his show, that that was a guy that someone Edwards, I think, was supporting, Governor Edwards, former governor, and Landry's not going to touch something that Governor Edwards might have supported.
I think he was referring to Jay Darden, the former lieutenant governor who also applied for the position and was a finalist. He is not in with the Landry crowd, so and he's getting older. I don't think he's gonna apply.
Give me a wild card Landry choice that you think may have a chance that maybe somebody's not talking about right now.
That's hard to say.
Because you think about it, you look at his original cabinet, and some of them have left, and I think about the two people that are no longer there, the DEQ secretary, Aurelia Giacometto, and then LDWF, drawing a blank, Piper. She's now over at ICE.
Madison Sheehan.
Those were not, like, when Madison Sheehan was not to be the secretary of the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries for a complete outsider, someone that knew nothing about Louisiana. It was just very weird. And so I think with this whole process, I would expect the unexpected.
Is there anybody that's currently involved with LSU, perhaps on the Board of Supervisors, who may want to throw their hat in the ring and be considered for this?
Do you know something I don't know?
Asking the question of the reporters that cover it.
I have not heard anything serious.
Okay. All right. You want to stick around for one more segment, Piper?
If you'll have me.
Okay. You know much about LSU softball?
I know they lost to Southeastern, and that was pretty embarrassing.
We know Beth Torino will not be the new president.
All right, let's take a break. More with Piper Hutchinson from the Louisiana Illuminator when we come back here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horne, and one more segment with Piper Hutchinson from the Louisiana Illuminator. And we were talking about William Tate, and he's been at LSU since 2021. Came in at a very interesting time. That was right around the midst of a bad scandal involving LSU athletics, and we're obviously we're coming off COVID, so it's just a very I think an awkward time altogether, and you're taking off the name of a former school president off the library, and all kinds of stuff is kind of revolving around the LSU campus at the time. I think I'm getting that right when they took the name off the library. But William Tate comes in, and so he's not coming into a situation where everything is hunky-dory. But when it comes to his involvement with LSU athletics, Piper, he really was very involved. And he wanted the best when it comes to academics, and he boosted enrollment and he boosted research dollars, but he wanted LSU athletics to really flourish.
Yeah, like we said, he kind of let Scott Woodward, rule the roost, but he did his part to support the teams, both with the women's basketball teams, and, he was pretty active in the recruiting process. It was pretty often I would put in a public records request for Tate's calendar, and there would be a lot of blacked off names where it said recruit visit. So he was playing a pretty active role in getting these people to campus and kind of pitching it to them.
One thing that was different while he was here, the NIL evolved. It started in 21 when he had first started.
That's a good point, too.
And then it evolved and it transformed into this behemoth that it is today, whereas we know LSU football has completely transformed in their opinion about NIL from last year to this year, and he played a role in actually raising money, and they're talking about Rutgers athletics going to really benefit from the experience that he had at building LSU into a capital generator.
I would say so. I mean, Tate was a big fundraiser. I would say he's going to be a big boost for Rutgers athletics.
They're going to need a lot of help.
They're going to need a lot of. Now, Rutgers is ranked 41st academically.
Yeah.
Compared to LSU is like 179
somewhere
in that. So that's a big.
But where's their baseball team ranked?
Yeah, and where's their football team ranked? And they compete in the Big Ten, and they're also and all joking aside, but they're in New Jersey, and in fact they're the only state university in the country that does not have the state name in their name, or something to that. Maybe
that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense.
But they're in the hub of pro sports with New York and that area. So college sports is going to kind of take a back seat. So it may be more difficult, even with his experience, to actually raise money for the Rutgers athletic department.
I mean, I don't think we're going to see Rutgers become a major powerhouse under Tate, but I certainly think that there are some lessons that can be transferred there.
It's interesting. In all of your freedom of information requests, how many have had to do, just out of curiosity, with NIL? What percentage have had to do with NIL and LSU's participation in that?
In NIL? Oh, basically none of them. I mean, Louisiana law exempts pretty much everything related to athletes' NIL deals from public disclosure.
Is that by accident?
That was a very deliberate choice that lawmakers made from the very beginning.
But I don't think any state allows it.
What about Tennessee?
I don't know, but I think we would hear about these deals.
Yeah, no, I'm being facetious.
But, you know, the NIL task force that lawmakers are doing right now, part of the thing that they want to study is whether there is a need for more transparency in the NIL process. I mean, if we're talking about maybe exempting NIL deals from state income tax in the future, well, we got to know how much they are, how much they're making, and how much money we're actually removing from the state's coffers.
Well, Deloitte's supposed to save the day in all of this.
Well, now they're talking about a new CEO that's going to make all the, like King CEO, who's going to make all these decisions. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. When is this settlement supposed to go? It's actually
you're the House settlement expert around here.
I'm trying to remember. I think that it's in her hands right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the objections were due like last week. So, right. I mean, I think we're just waiting around now.
And I mean, it's all supposed to go into effect July 1st. So,
well, better hurry up.
Yeah, the clock is ticking on it. That's for sure. I mean, we're 6 weeks away from July 1st. So, well, Piper, it's great to have you here. You're full of knowledge when it comes to this. It will be very interesting. Have you heard of a timetable on when we might be? I mean, obviously the Board of Supervisors has got to have a search committee, but we all know that the governor is the one that's going to choose or have a heavy hand anyways on who will be the next president.
I'm sure he's going to want to influence the process. The timeline, that's to be determined. I hope that there is a thorough and open and transparent search process. We don't necessarily know that that's going to happen. I mean, if you look at the UL system a couple of years ago, they just hired a president for their system with no search whatsoever. Yeah. They just announced it one day. So LSU could do the same thing. I sincerely hope that they do not. They will be under a lot of public scrutiny and backlash if they do that. But
whenever Tate was named by F. King Alexander, or to replace F. King Alexander, there was a year difference, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, a little bit more than that because I'm drawing a blank on who we had COVID in the middle of all that, too.
So, it usually takes several months to do this sort of search.
Piper, thanks a lot. You can read her stuff at the Louisiana Illuminator, and she also does some investigative reporting for Tiger Rag. We'll have to bring you on here soon, Piper, when the next drama involves the Capitol and LSU. We'll take a break. More of Tiger Rag Radio after this.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie,
Trailblazer.
stylish, nimble,
Tracks.
innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round Champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
All right, back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Great having Piper Hutchinson inside the Super Chevy dealer studio. We'll have to get her on again, especially in the summertime, Todd, when there's not a ton to go over, but very insightful stuff from Piper. Eye-opening stuff happening over at Tiger Park this past weekend as LSU softball goes down, and they don't even make it to the championship round of their own regional. And for the second time in 3 years, LSU is eliminated by an in-state school in the NCAA postseason. Here to talk about it is Jim Kleinpeter on the Max Home Hotline. Jim covers LSU softball for The Advocate. Of course, he also contributes to Tiger Rag Magazine and TigerRag.com. How you doing tonight, Jim? No trip to Knoxville for you, huh? While we try to figure out what's going on, what did you make out of, Todd, your thoughts on, for whatever reason this year, we really didn't talk much about LSU softball
because
this
we
year.
knew what was going to happen. That's why.
Well, I don't think we thought Southeastern would beat them twice.
No, but okay. So here's my thoughts. All right.
Okay.
I was paying attention to the shenanigans at Tiger Park this past weekend, and my thoughts were, forget about it being a fourth-seeded Southeastern. They did win 50 games this year, which it's hard to win 50 games.
Yeah.
They were all Louisiana kids, all recruited, all right? And here they are coming into this resource-laden, giant program that expends all this money and has all this NIL, relatively speaking, NIL recruiting budget, and they just got beat. Literally. Yeah. I mean, those were two close games, but Southeastern just beat LSU and then got clocked against Nebraska both times they had to play them. So my take is it's a good thing LSU didn't have to play Nebraska.
All right, let's bring in Jim. Jim, you were there at Tiger Park. What was your thoughts over what you saw on Friday afternoon and Saturday night with LSU losing twice to Southeastern Louisiana and having their season end in that fashion?
Yeah, it's no big, it's no excuse, but it was a bad matchup. Southeastern plays small ball, and nobody plays that anymore. And what happens, LSU barely beat them in February. So it was a bad matchup. It's just not a good reason for not beating them, though. Yeah. LSU started the season 35-5, and they played a really tough SEC schedule. And I think this team was not mentally tough and didn't know how to handle the second half of the season. I talked to Beth Torino today, and she said it's a little bit like it's that old saying, they got a little bit over their skis from the first half of the season. And, I mean, they were really good offensively against a lot of teams. I don't think she scheduled very difficult in the first part of the season. She usually schedules a little tougher, but I think she knew what she had six new players in the lineup, so she didn't want to go too hard and let them lose their confidence. And then I just think that they lost a little of their edge once the second half of the season started, second half of the SEC season, and they played top 6 teams every 4 weeks in a row.
Right.
And they went 4-8 against them. And I just think maybe their egos were brought down a little bit. And then they go against this team that really forces you to be like, you got to be perfect on. And if you watch softball enough, you see it's a fast game.
Yes, it is.
The bases are only 60 feet apart. You field a bunch, you've got to field it and throw it. You cannot hesitate. You cannot bobble it. And Danica Coffey had a rough time. The LSU players were holding the ball, not sure whether to throw down or not, and they were giving up easy extra bases, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
And just really not not what Beth coached them to do.
Yeah, I would say the trip to Texas, for whatever reason, that's when this season derailed, and they had a couple of really bad losses there, games that they led or had big leads, and they blew the leads. My thing, though, is almost kind of a groundhog scenario, because last year they had another great. They were 24-0. Remember when they played Texas at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday, and it was 1 versus 2 or something like that, and they were 24-0. And then they had, I want to say it was the Ole Miss series last year. They had a lead. They won the first game. They lose the second game late. They had the lead, and then they coughed it up, and then they lost game 3. And then literally the same thing happened again this year. It was the South Carolina series. They win the first game, and then South Carolina comes back to beat them in game 2, and then South Carolina wins game 3. And in both situations, they were not the same team after that for whatever reason. Now, last year, I pinned it on the injury to Danica Coffey, because that was such that would be like taking Derek Carriel out of this LSU lineup. It would just mess up everything. And I kind of put it on that, but now I've seen the movie twice, and I'm just like, okay, what is going on? And I think the word, I got to go back to the word that you used. They just, what did you say, Jim? Not mentally strong enough, or that's what I'm wondering. And it's two different teams too. Last year's team was senior laden, and this year's team is filled with transfers and young players and stuff like that. And so it's not the same personnel. So there's something there where this team just kind of falls apart, and then they can't get it back on the tracks again, and they can't get them playing consistent softball again.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Texas trip. They went to A&M and got swept, but they didn't. That's not where they lost it. They lost it at University of Texas when they went there, and they lost the first game in the 7th inning. They had the lead going. They had the lead in the 6th. Texas tied it, and then hit a grand slam in the 7th inning to win 7-3 or something like that. And they came back in the 3rd game, almost the exact same scenario. If they take 2 out of 3 in that Texas game, they probably would have gotten a top 8 seed. And I don't know if they would have avoided Southeastern, but it might have made things a little bit different. But there were some things going on in this team that weren't really apparent. Apparently, I guess you guys have heard about Sydney Berzon. She's gone into the portal now, and she was like the rock of this team. She was a 2-time All-American. She's their number 1 pitcher, and she had just a disastrous second half of the season. And Beth talked about after the Southeastern loss at the end of the tournament that Sydney had some difficulties. But I don't know with injuries, and I don't know how much that is, because now she's in the portal, and apparently she's not happy. And this is all kind of, they keep things close to the vest. Beth does not like to talk about negatives. She won't discuss injuries. She won't even tell us who's going to pitch the next game. And she keeps things pretty close to the vest. But that was the first anybody had ever heard about Sydney being unhealthy at any time this year. But I think there's maybe more to it than that.
So why do you think she entered the portal yourself? Why do you believe she entered the portal?
I don't know. I've spoken to her for 3 years now, and she doesn't like to talk about her negative performances. She will not. I'm not going to say she won't own up to them, but she doesn't like to talk about them. She'll give credit to the other team for being a good team, and she does. Sometimes she won't come out to talk after a game where she pitches poorly. But every time I've ever talked to Beth about Sydney, I've never gotten the impression that there was any problem or anything there. But apparently there is, and apparently it's come to a head, and she's going to get, she's going to end up. She's going to have a lot of suitors, let me put it that way, because she's an excellent pitcher. And I don't know where this leaves LSU for next year, because she was easily their ace. I think Jaden Heavner is definitely capable of becoming an ace, but she showed that, she's still a freshman.
Right.
She has some fantastic games. And I mean, she pitched well. She shut down some SEC teams pretty well. And I think next year she'll be maybe ready to become the ace. But Beth's going to have to go get another. She's going to have to go get another maybe 2 pitchers.
Jim, can you hold on through the break and we'll keep this discussion going? All right, more of Jim Kleinpeter as we talk LSU softball and what happens next. And based on a report from WAFB Jacques Doucet, Beth Torino will be back next season, so we'll get into that a little bit as well. So stay tuned for that here on Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
May programs are blooming at your neighborhood East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Introduce the kids to Shakespeare. Celebrate local authors at Author Row. And honor the brave men and women of the armed services with a Memorial Day concert. All happening at your local library. Visit ebrpl.com for details. That's ebrpl.com.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo with Todd Horne as we continue on with Jim Kleinpeter, who covers LSU softball for The Advocate.
So, Jim, you talked to Beth today, you said?
Yes, absolutely.
And what are your feelings on the decision apparently that has been made by the administration to bring her back for next year? Do you think she can turn it around like she's espousing that she can do?
Oh, I think she can. I mean, LSU has the resources. They'll spend whatever, they'll spend whatever they have to spend to get. They're going to need to bring in a couple of hitters, and probably they're going to need to try to find the best pitcher they can in the portal. They got a good freshman coming in, a good freshman pitcher who throws over 70. So, Beth was kind of on the hot seat last year, and they performed really well. She got them almost to the College World Series, and one game short of the College World Series. They got a bad draw. They just missed the top 8. They were the number 9 seed. They had to go to Stanford, and if you know anything about the pitcher Canada, she pitched all 3 games. Right. LSU racked her pretty good in the first one, but they couldn't scratch in the next 2. Well, she took $1 million to go to Texas Tech, of all places. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around somebody leaving Stanford to go to Texas Tech, but this is a new world,
right.
with the NIL money, and she took. And she said, "Hey, this is a softball, though. A pitcher like that can change a program." And Texas Tech was a 12 seed, and they're in the Super Regional. So, and so they gave her. I think she was on the hot seat last year, and they gave her a 3-year extension. So they're not going to fire her for this. Okay, they went 42-16. She's won 40 games 3 years in a row now, and she's had success before. She knows what she's doing, and I think the one thing you gotta think of is if you fire her, and I think most of the players like her, and they like a lot of the players like being in the LSU environment because it's very good even for the people that aren't playing, and I'll give you a good example of that. When after the COVID year, nobody would leave. And so they had all these new players coming in. They had all the players from the year before. She had like 32 people on the team and nobody wanted to leave, and she couldn't very well have anybody, and they threw out the roster limitations. And that really messed them up that next year after the COVID. They just had too many people, and then a bunch of people left, and then things kind of got back where they're going. But she got a 3-year extension. She's good. She makes $450,000 a year, and that's through 2028. So, you don't fire your softball. I mean, you might fire Brian Kelly, if he's having the same kind of trouble, but you wouldn't fire your softball coach.
Okay, so strictly financial reasons, you can't afford to pay that buyout, because that would be 1.2, 1.5 million, somewhere in that neighborhood for her and the coaching staff. but they're not making any progress in the SEC, and the SEC just keeps getting better and better and better. So what is the solution here?
Well, I mean, she's got skins on the wall though, and I compared her to Brian Kelly, and he hasn't done anything at LSU yet. He's kind of maintained. Most people can come into LSU. Just about any coach in the country can come into LSU and win 10 games. You got to be able to. It's that last little step you've got to be able to make. I think they would be starting over from ground zero if they got rid of her. There would be a mass exodus of everybody, and I don't know. Maybe I ought to rethink that since Sydney Berzon's leaving. I don't know who else is. And talking to Beth today, she indicated to me that they're going to probably lose some players. I don't think they're going to lose the starters. They may lose some of their bench because she had some places in the lineup where she was trying to get, she rotated people and they never did find somebody to be the designated player spot. Just kept turning over. She just kept changing it around, and she had some people I think she was disappointed couldn't really step up and take it. But the other thing is they didn't have any. They had two power hitters in the lineup that were reliable, and that's Macy Bergeron and of course Tori Edwards, who had a fantastic year. And they need more players they need at least two more sticks in the lineup like that. Mackenzie Redity was somebody that could have been that person, but she just kind of plateaued, and she had about the same year she had last year. She drove in more runs, but she just didn't provide enough. It's doubles and home runs. You got to hit those, get those extra runners in. That's really where this offense was failed. But it was a record-setting offense.
Yeah,
and
right.
I think
Tori Edwards had an unbelievable season. I mean, out of nowhere too. So it's a shame that they kind of spoiled that. Jim, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure, guys.
All right, Jim Kleinpeter from The Advocate and also contributes to Tiger Rag. We'll take a break. Last segment of the show coming up.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with the executive editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Todd Horne. One more segment to go. A lot of buzz here. I wanted to get a little football talk in before we leave, but I don't know if you caught it or not, but Joel Klatt revealed his top 10 quarterbacks for 2025.
Top 10 quarterbacks?
Top 10 quarterbacks for 2025.
I thought you were going to go to the top 10 coaches, but okay.
No. But where do you think Garrett Nussmeier is on that list?
Sixth.
So you know?
Oh, I just guessed. Is that it?
You're right.
All right.
Seriously,
I just guessed.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, why would you say 6?
I would have said it. I would have said he's probably second or third, but I just guessed 6.
6, yeah. Because I think there's this.
I got like ESP,
Well, but is he really? To me, he's a top 5 quarterback next year.
Well, to me, he's probably the top returning quarterback in the country.
So
how many quarterbacks have passed for 4,000 yards?
Well, that's my thinking. So you got Cade Klubnik, who he's got him listed number 1, which is going to be great for the great storyline for the LSU Clemson game. The one I just can't.
Arch.
I can't go there. Now Arch might be. But how do you put Arch Manning ahead of a guy who just threw for over 4,000 yards? We don't know if Arch Manning can throw. I think he probably could.
So let me ask you this.
But we don't know.
Who in the last 6 years in college football quarterbacks have had the best seasons that you can ever remember?
Well,
in the last 6-7 years.
Well, it's Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels.
And what did they do their first year?
They had okay seasons, but not great.
But
I think Nussmeier's last year was better than Burrow and Daniels.
Statistically, it was for sure. Jaden Daniels passed for 2,900 yards his first year starting at LSU. He had already started 3 years prior at Arizona State. He comes to LSU, passes for 2,900 yards. Garrett Nussmeier walks in and passes for 4,000 yards and 12 more touchdowns than Jaden Daniels did, who was better. They were both better than Joe Burrow their first year. Okay, so if he has the same improvement from first year to second year, he's going to be the stud of the
I just think
Heisman candidate.
We could get into this a lot more. I hate the show's ending right here, but I just think the national media, and I'm not sitting there saying this because of purple and gold. We got to go. But I just think the national media doesn't have much confidence in LSU. But we can talk about that for the next 3 months leading up to the season opener. That's Todd Horne. I'm Jeff Palermo, Jackson Blackman. We'll see you next week here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag is everywhere. Online at TigerRag.com. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Tiger Rag Magazine. Or follow us on Twitter at Tiger_Rag.